I remember this case not because of the number of victims, not because of the headlines, but because of how long he walked among people before we understood who he really was. His name was Ted Bundy.
Based on your
Well, I'm sure it works, and you've got to have faith it'll work, or else you'd be reduced to some kind of, mumbling idiot.
does that mean?
To the world, he looked ordinary, educated, polite, intelligent. The kind of man you would never cross the street to avoid. And that was exactly why he succeeded for so long. When his name first appeared in our notes, nothing about him stood out as dangerous. A law student, a volunteer at a crisis hotline, a man who knew how to speak calmly and confidently. He understood something many criminals don't. People trust what feels familiar. Bundy often approached young women pretending to be injured. A cast on his arm, a limp, crutches, a request for help carrying books to his car. And they helped him. At first, the crimes appeared scattered. Different cities, different states. For a long time, no one realized they were chasing one man. Women were disappearing from Washington, then Utah, then Colorado. But there was a pattern, and someone noticed it. Her name was Elizabeth Klopfer. She was Bundy's girlfriend, and 3 separate times she called the police about him. The first call came in 1974 after women started disappearing near Lake Sammamish in Washington. Witnesses described a handsome man with his arm in a sling asking for help. A man who called himself Ted and drove a tan Volkswagen Beetle. Klopfer knew Ted Bundy drove a tan Volkswagen. She knew he fit the description. And something in her gut told her to call. Detectives listened. They added his name to a suspect list that eventually grew to 25 names. But with no physical evidence, they couldn't act. Then in November 1974, after reading that young women were disappearing around Salt Lake City, where Bundy had just moved to attend law school, she called again. And in December 1974, she called a 3rd time. His name kept appearing, but the Lake Sammamish witness they trusted most failed to identify him from a photo lineup, so they waited. November 8, 1974, Fashion Place Mall in Murray, Utah. 18-year-old Carol DeRange was window shopping when a man approached her. He showed her a badge, said someone had tried to break into her car, told her he was Officer Roseland from the Murray Police Department. She believed him. They walked to the parking lot. Her car looked fine, but he insisted she come to the station because they had the suspect in custody. She got into his tan Volkswagen Beetle. As they drove, she noticed something wrong. The route didn't lead to the police station. She could smell alcohol on his breath. The car was messy, unkempt. Then he pulled over near a school, and suddenly there were handcuffs. He swung them toward her wrist, but in his rush, he made a critical error. Both cuffs clicked onto the same wrist. DeRange saw her chance. She fought. She screamed. She clawed at his face. When he pulled out a crowbar and swung it at her head, she threw open the door and ran. One shoe missing, handcuff dangling from her wrist, directly into the path of an oncoming car. The driver stopped. DeRange was hysterical but alive. Bundy drove away. Later that same evening, 17-year-old Deborah Jean Kent disappeared from a high school parking lot in Bountiful, 20 miles north. She was never seen again, but investigators found something, a key that unlocked the handcuffs removed from DeRange's wrist. For the first time, they had a survivor, and she would remember everything. August 16th, 1975, 3 a.m. Granger, Utah. Utah Highway Patrol Sergeant Bob Hayward was sitting in his patrol car outside his own home, about to end his shift, when he noticed something odd. A tan Volkswagen Beetle was cruising slowly through his residential neighborhood in the pre-dawn darkness. When the driver spotted the patrol car, the Beetle suddenly accelerated and fled at high speed. Hayward gave chase. After a pursuit through quiet suburban streets, he pulled the vehicle over. The driver was calm, polite, well-spoken. He said his name was Ted Bundy. He was a law student. Hayward noticed the front passenger seat had been removed and placed in the back. When Hayward searched the car, he found a ski mask. Another mask made from pantyhose with eye holes cut out, handcuffs, a crowbar, an ice pick, rope, garbage bags, torn bed sheets. Bundy had an explanation for everything. The ski mask was for skiing. He'd found the handcuffs in a dumpster. The rest were just household items. Hayward arrested him anyway for evading an officer. Back at the station, Detective Jerry Thompson heard about the arrest. Something clicked in his memory. A kidnapping case from 9 months earlier. A tan Volkswagen, handcuffs, a crowbar, Carol Duranche's case. Thompson also remembered the name Ted Bundy from a phone tip a month earlier. Elizabeth Klopfer's call. The pieces were coming together. Police impounded the Volkswagen. FBI technicians tore it apart, fiber by fiber. They found hair samples. Not just any hair. Strands that microscopically matched 3 different victims who had never met each other. Melissa Smith, Laura Amy, and Carol Duranche. FBI specialist Robert Neal later testified that finding hair from 3 unconnected victims in one vehicle would be a coincidence of mind-boggling rarity. On October 2nd, 1975, detectives placed Bundy in a lineup. Carol Duranche walked in. She looked at the men standing before her, and without hesitation, she identified him. That's him. That's Officer Roseland. Witnesses from the high school in Bountiful also recognized him as the stranger who'd been pacing in their auditorium the night Deborah Kent disappeared. Ted Bundy was charged with aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault. February 23rd, 1976. Salt Lake City. By the time Bundy's trial began, rumors were swirling. Detectives from multiple states suspected he was connected to dozens of disappearances. But Bundy's attorney, John O'Connell, knew that any hint of those other cases could cause a mistrial. On the advice of his lawyer, Bundy waived his right to a jury trial. He put his fate in the hands of a single judge, Stuart Hansen Jr. The prosecution's entire case rested on one person, Carol Duranche. She was painfully shy, only 19 years old. As she testified, she kept her eyes fixed on the floor, her voice barely above a whisper at times. O'Connell attacked her credibility. He pointed out inconsistencies in her descriptions. The color of the badge, whether it was gold or silver, details about the car. He suggested police had coached her, shown her too many photos, programmed her to identify Bundy, but Duranche held firm. When asked if she could identify her attacker, she lifted her hand. Through tears, she pointed directly at Ted Bundy. That's him. Bundy stared back at her, cold, emotionless. Judge Hansen spent the entire weekend reviewing the case. On March 1st, 1976, he delivered his verdict. Guilty. Bundy was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in Utah State Prison. But the investigation was far from over. In October 1976, Colorado authorities charged Bundy with the murder of Corinne Campbell, a 23-year-old nurse who had vanished from a ski resort. Hair found in Bundy's car matched Campbell's. Impressions on her skull matched the crowbar found in his Volkswagen. Bundy was extradited to Colorado to stand trial. And then, in June 1977, he did something almost no one expected. During a preliminary hearing in Aspen, left alone in the courthouse law library, Bundy jumped out of a second-story window and ran. He jogged down Main Street in broad daylight and disappeared into the mountains. The FBI issued wanted posters. A $100,000 reward was offered. He was recaptured 8 days later, hiding in the mountains, exhausted and hungry. But Bundy wasn't done. On December 30th, 1977, New Year's Eve, he escaped again. This time he crawled through an opening in the ceiling of his jail cell and slipped out through the jailer's apartment while they were out for the evening. He made it to Chicago, then Michigan, then Atlanta, and finally to Tallahassee, Florida. On February 10th, 1978, Bundy was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. By then, he had already killed again. January 15th, 1978, 2:45 a.m., Tallahassee, Florida. Bundy entered the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University through a rear door with a broken lock. In less than 15 minutes, he killed Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy and violently attacked 2 other young women, leaving them severely injured. Less than a month later, on February 9th, he abducted and killed 12-year-old Kimberly Leach in Lake City, Florida. 3 days after that, his freedom ended for the final time. February 15th, 1978, 1:30 a.m., Pensacola, Florida. Officer David Lee of the Pensacola Police Department was working the midnight shift in a quiet residential area when he spotted an orange Volkswagen Beetle behind Oscar's restaurant on West Cervantes Street. Something felt off. The car pulled onto the street with no headlights on. Lee followed. He ran the plates. Stolen. Lee hit his lights and pulled the car over near Catholic High School, just outside city limits. "Get out of the car. Lie down on the ground." The driver complied. Lee approached and began to handcuff him. He got one cuff on the left wrist. Then the man rolled over and struck Lee in the face with the dangling handcuff, swept his legs out from under him, and ran. Lee fired a warning shot, then a second. He gave chase and tackled the man to the ground. They struggled over Lee's gun. Finally, Lee subdued him. As Lee drove his suspect to the station, the man sat in silence, staring out at the dark streets of Pensacola. Then he spoke. "I wish you had killed me." Lee didn't know who he had just arrested. Not yet. At the station, Detective Norman Chapman interviewed the suspect. The man was calm, charming even. He gave his name as Kenneth Misner, a stolen identity from an FSU student, but his fingerprints told the truth. Theodore Robert Bundy, one of the most wanted fugitives in America. In July 1979, Bundy stood trial for the Chi Omega murders. Against all advice, he represented himself. He believed he could talk his way out, the same way he had talked his way into people's trust for years. Key testimony came from a sorority member who saw him leaving the house that night, clutching a piece of oak firewood. But the evidence that sealed his fate was something Bundy had never anticipated: bite marks. On Lisa Levy's body, forensic odontologists matched the bite impressions to castings of Bundy's teeth. It was the first time in Florida history that bite mark evidence had been used in a murder trial. The jury deliberated for less than 7 hours, guilty on all counts. Judge Edward Cowart sentenced him to death, but added something unexpected. "You're a bright young man. You'd have made a good lawyer, but you went another way, partner. Take care of yourself." In 1980, Bundy was convicted again, this time for the murder of Kimberly Leach, another death sentence. For over a decade, Bundy appealed. He gave interviews. He confessed to 30 murders, though investigators believe the true number was much higher, possibly over 40. In his final days, desperate to delay execution, he offered more confessions. He tried to help police find bodies. He blamed pornography. He tried everything. It didn't work. On January 24, 1989, at 7:16 a.m., Ted Bundy was executed by the state of Florida, according to official records. Outside the prison, crowds gathered. Some held signs, some cheered, most simply stood in silence, witnesses to the end of one of the darkest chapters in American criminal history. For investigators like Bob Hayward, Jerry Thompson, Carol Duranch, and David Lee, the people who caught him, there was no celebration, only closure. Ted Bundy didn't look like a monster. He looked like someone you trust, someone who would help you carry your books, someone who would volunteer at a crisis center, someone who was studying to become a lawyer. And that is the most dangerous thing about him. This case taught investigators lessons that still matter today. Evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it asks politely for help. Sometimes it shows you a badge. Sometimes it smiles. The threads that caught Ted Bundy were small: a girlfriend's intuition, a highway patrolman's suspicion, a survivor's courage, and a routine traffic stop in the middle of the night. But investigators followed every thread. They believed the victims, they connected the patterns, and they never stopped looking. Because of them, one of history's most prolific killers was stopped. This case is now closed. MR Crime Files.